Hi, let's talk about Meet Joe Black. The personification of death has appeared numerous times both in cinema and video games, Darksiders 2 being a personal favorite, but in a lot of media, they simply treat death as an antagonist, or in some cases, simple comedic relief.
Best of seven? Damn right!
Very few films explore death as a character with personality or motivation, and even those don't really use it till its full potential. But one film stands out above the rest to me as a shining example of turning something we thought to be scary and unknowable into something warm and familiar. And if you clicked on the video, you'll know that the film in question is 1998's Meet Joe Black. It was produced and directed by Martin Brest, who you may recall also directed Midnight Run, Scent of a Woman, and Geely, the latter of which bombed horribly, but we don't have to talk about that right now. And while the main power trio of the film are Anthony Hopkins, Brad Pitt, and Claire Forlani, each of whom easily deserve an episode dedicated to their respective works, I would not be able to forgive myself if I didn't take the time to praise Brest for his choices for the supporting trio. Jeffrey Tambor, a Golden Globe winner and sweet human being whose resume is longer than the damn Constitution, Jake Weber, who went on to have fantastic roles in Medium and Hell on Wheels, and upon obsessive rewatch, arguably my favorite character, Allison, played by the magnificent Oscar Award winner Marcia Gay Harden. You'll probably know her from her recent run in Code Black, but she's popped up in The Mist, Pollock, Welcome to Moose. You know what? I'm going to talk plenty about her in a bit, so we're just going to move on for now. Brest adapted the story from Death Takes a Holiday.
This film, Death Takes a Holiday, 20 years ago, and in it was an idea that knocked me out, which is the idea of death taking human form and deciding to see what it's like to be alive.
He kept the bare frame of the plot. Death takes a human form, meets a rich man, and falls for his daughter, but he shook up everything else, and let's be honest, it was for the better. I mean, sit through Death Takes a Holiday and tell me I'm wrong. The best decision he made by far was turning Death from this enigmatic, suave kind of person to someone more lost than a teen at their first day at a fast food job. He's existed forever and has seen it all, but hasn't actually done it all. So once he obtains a human form, he has to undergo a crash course to learn all the small, random things that we pick up over years and decades. And as a result, it gives the film an absolutely wonderful comedic element that helps balance the depressive narrative that is otherwise being told. Brest and Pitt talk a lot about how hard it was to write a character like this because there hadn't been anything like that before.
I say I'm gonna do this thing, and then it comes the day of, okay, so what are you gonna do? And it's death. All right? How the hell do I play death? I don't know what that is. It's not like you can do research. It's not like you can go to a morgue and have some conversations. I mean, it's pretty wide open, isn't it?
Thank God for Brad Pitt and his smile. And using this as a core narrative, Brest constructs a very intricate relationship with the remaining characters, and then plops Joe right in the center to shake everything up and bring wisdom and hope to pretty much everyone in his own strange way.
Stay open. Who knows? Lightning could strike.
While the story is focused on Joe and his attempt to learn humanity, they use relationships as the primary force of that learning, not only in his relationships with Bill, Susan, and Quint, but also in his watching and listening about the relationships of others. His relationship with Bill starts out in a very obvious power imbalance, as Bill is terrified and doesn't know how to handle this. But very quickly, Bill gets a feel for the situation, maintains a certain amount of control, and ultimately becomes the more powerful of the two. They fight and poke at each other, but in the end, they truly come to understand one another in a way that no two other characters really achieve here. Joe and Susan's relationship starts rocky, mostly because the body Death is using belonged to a guy she met and flirted with in a coffee shop like 12 hours prior to them meeting at the dinner, but also because she's currently with Drew and they aren't doing great and it's getting to her, and the fact that Joe so openly talks about and questions their relationship really freaks her out. Not to mention, it angers Bill and Drew that Susan and Joe talk at all, but obviously Joe is taken with her and she obviously comes to fall for him as well. Joe and Drew obviously do have a lot of tension, but it's really only one-sided from Drew, as Joe either doesn't fully understand the situation he's in and him attempting to learn more unintentionally further aggravates Drew.
It's given the absolute necessity for growth, given the future. The truth is, joining John Bonnecue is every bit as certain as death and taxes.
Death and taxes?
Yes.
Death and taxes?
Yes.
What an odd pairing.
It's just a saying, Mr. Black.
By whom?
Doesn't matter.
Then why'd you bring it up?
Or Joe is intentionally pushing Drew's buttons.
Hi.
Am I interrupting?
Yes.
No.
Just kidding.
Sit down, Drew.
Joe and Quince have an absolutely wonderful friendship.
This is fun.
Yes, Quince, it is.
Quince is by far the nicest and friendliest to him when the group all meets him at the dinner, and only ever speaks to Joe with respect and kindness. He even confides in Joe later about a huge mistake he made, and trusts in Joe enough to take his advice. He even gives Joe some really great advice himself.
But Allison loves you. How do you know?
Because she knows the worst thing about me, and it's okay.
What is it?
No, it's not one thing. It's just an idea, Joe. It's just, it's like, you know each other's secrets. The deepest, darkest secrets.
Deepest, darkest secrets?
Yeah, and then you're free.
Free.
You're free. You're free to love each other completely, totally, just no fear. So there's nothing you don't know about each other, and it's okay.
Bill obviously loves and adores his youngest daughter, Susan. There really isn't much of a development between the two past the start of the film, where he tells Susan that even though Drew is a good match for Bill's company, he sees the lack of a spark between them and knows that Drew isn't a good match for her. And he sums it up in one of the most beautiful and eloquent ways you will ever have the pleasure of hearing.
I know it's a cornball thing, but love is passion. Obsession. Someone you can't live without. I say, fall head over heels. Find someone you can love like crazy and who'll love you the same way back. How do you find him? Well, you forget your head and you listen to your heart. I'm not hearing any heart. Because the truth is, honey, there's no sense living your life without this. To make the journey and not fall deeply in love, well, you haven't lived a life at all. But you have to try, because if you haven't tried, you haven't lived.
But the painfully underspoken about relationship between Bill and his eldest daughter, Allison, is by and large one of the strongest and well-written relationship arcs I've seen in a film. From the moment we meet Allison, she's obsessing over some small details of the party she's planning for her father's birthday. And again, when Joe meets her with the rest of the family at dinner, she's going on and on about what sort of party favors guests should receive. And at first, the film makes her out to be a tightly wound, obsessive control freak, and you may be annoyed with her upon first watch. But the biggest fact of it is, she obsesses about her father, a man she loves and idolizes. Keeping that context in mind, it repaints her as a very loyal and dedicated daughter who often goes pushed aside and disregarded. And if you notice, every time she's pushed aside when talking about the party, it only makes her more desperate to please her dad. And despite the fact that it's most often her father who's doing the pushing aside, she still tries and tries. And though her frustration culminates in her freaking out during the cake tasting scene, their actual resolution comes to a head just before the party, where she she comes right out and tells her father how she truly feels.
I haven't been the father to you that,
That you've been to Susan?
No, I wasn't going to say that.
But that's what you were thinking. And that's okay. Never mind favorites. You're allowed to have one. The point is, you've been mine.
And as a sibling and child in that very position, I can't tell you how hard this hits me every time I watch it. Being a child and wanting the same love and acceptance as your siblings receive is hard. And sometimes you try harder as a result, and sometimes you don't try at all. But being an adult and recognizing that everyone is allowed to have favorites and that you weren't your parents' favorite is one of the hardest things you'll ever have to do in life. Allison is arguably the strongest person of the entire group. She lived in the shadows, had her efforts scoffed at, broke through the wall, and came out the other side, still remaining a loving and dedicated daughter. And Marcia Gay Harden's performance only further broke my heart. So if you watch the film and watch this and still aren't on Team Allison, then we can't be friends.
It's hard to let go, isn't it?
Yes, it is, Bill.
And that's life. What can I tell you?
When I first started the script, I had a mind to talk about the way the film handles closure, but upon further deep dives into it, I made a really big realization. This film doesn't give anyone closure, it simply allows the characters to let go of what they're afraid and angry about. Closure is most often defined as a satisfying sense of finality, but if you really look and listen closely, you'll see that no one actually gets any closure about things. They all let go of something, and as Quince put it, they're free and have no fear. Susan lets go of her father and even Joe, even though she doesn't fully understand what's happening. Quince lets go of the fear of coming clean to Allison and Bill. Allison lets go of trying so hard to impress her father. Drew lets go of Susan and his schemes. Joe has to let go of his entire life that he managed to build in such a short time frame. And then there's of course our one and only William Parrish. Bill lets go of his fear that his company will become something different when he's gone after spending most of the film worried about it. He lets go of his fear that Susan wouldn't experience true love and get out of the bad relationship she's in. But most important of all, he lets go of his fear of death. When we start the film, he has 2 light heart attacks and he tries to bargain with Joe when he first meets him. During the course of the film, we see him struggling to handle his personal and professional business while fighting with the fact that he's about to die. But by the end, he's not only scolding Death for his wrongdoings and standing up to him, but he's the one who tells Death it's time to go. The two completely switch sides from where you think they would be. Instead of Death telling the human that your time is over, the human tells Death that your time pretending to be one of us is over. And both characters, letting go of what's important to them, walk side by side over the bridge to the other side. A film that has a lot to say and really takes its time to say it. But I'm curious, what do you think?